So it's my pleasure to be able to talk about works from the Kamloops Art Gallery's collection. Some of you who have been in Kamloops for a very long time may remember this exhibition from 2007. So we're revisiting an exhibition called Arctic Treasures, the Mary and Glenn Martin collection, and that was 17 years ago, and I thought it was very apropos to show this work alongside Double Vision since we had the space. As Margaret had mentioned, Dr. Glenn Martin worked locally as a pathologist, and he began collecting Inuit work, carvings mostly, in the 1950s after he saw an exhibition of Inuit work at Burke's Jewelers, of all places, in Ottawa. And then he became an avid collector. And so in 2007, he donated 26 works to our collection, 20 of which we're showing tonight. And so the prints shown here span from 1962 to 1990. And the title of the exhibition, I'll just give a little explanation. Sleeping in Skins is borrowed from the title of a work right by Tanya in her lovely hat over there, which I'll talk about more in a moment. I just love the title of that work. And the subtitle, Life in Inuit Nunangat, I wanted to situate us geographically. So, it also speaks to the stories about Inuit life that are shared in these prints. So Nunangat is a vast expanse of land, and we actually have included a map in the corner over there that's really worth looking at so you can get a sense of the geography. It includes the Northwest Territories, Northern Quebec, and Northern Labrador. It makes up 35% of Canada's land mass and 50% of Canada's coastline. So it's a huge area. And the works in this collection really represent a time of transition from nomadic ways of living on the land through seasonal hunting and fishing camps, and then the move of artists to more populated settlements. So it's, well, you'll see a lot of animals and people and the land itself. But really, a lot of the artists were moving away from living on the land and moving to southern communities where there was a need to make an income. And I would say this exhibition and also Double Vision is very celebratory, very colorful, surprisingly colorful. But what's not pictured is, of course, the underlying narrative that's tied to the impacts of European contact and centuries of colonization that forced people to move to the south. And I'm happy that the exhibitions aren't focusing on the challenges of the Inuit, but you know, as Maya had mentioned, there was a starvation period in the 1930s during the Depression was very challenging, and I'll also mention some of the artists here suffered from TB, and yet, you know, Inuit adapted fiercely and lived in this harsh climate and this vast expanse of land in the isolation of the North for many years. So it was in the 1950s, though, that government programs like the one in Baker Lake that Maya had mentioned formed print cooperatives. So this provided the equipment and the space dedicated to printmaking and access to global markets, which were supported by the federal government, ironically. So Dorset Fine Arts was established in Toronto in 1978, and that was a wholesale marketing division of West Baffin Eskimo Cooperative. And Maya had mentioned earlier that we'll use the word Eskimo in this context for place names or the title of works. But we have also provided a content notice at the beginning of the exhibition if you want to know more about the change in the use of the pejorative word Eskimo. So prior to the introduction of printmaking, carving was the dominant art form, primarily done by men. So many artists that are shown in this collection, and I'll get to speaking about the work specifically in a moment, many of the artists were carvers as well. So most of the prints in this collection were by artists based in Kingate, Nunavut. And this was formerly known as Cape Dorset. You'll probably be familiar with the Dorset print collection and catalog. So the change to this place name was made in 2020 officially as part of a reclamation of Inuktitut place names. So Kingate Studios are now housed within the Kanojuak Cultural Center. So Kanojuak Ashevak's work you'll probably be familiar with is over on that side of the room. Jesse Unark, as Maya mentioned, was the only artist outside of Kingate to be included in the annual Cape Dorset print collection. So there were a number of nice connections that were made along the way in putting this exhibition together. Kingate means high mountain, so it's a hamlet on Dorset Island, the southern tip of Baffin Island. So in the 1950s, carving and printmaking were encouraged by the artist and government administrator James Houston, along with his wife Alma, and they lived in Kingate. Houston studied with Japanese printmaker Unichi Hiratsaku, who brought Japanese paper and techniques back to Kingate to deliver workshops. And then in 1962, the Cape Dorset print collection catalog introduced two new developments in Inuit printmaking: engravings and stone-cut prints, which you'll see here. The engraving enabled artists to draw their compositions onto copper or aluminum printing plates, and you can really sense the artist's hand, and you can feel the artist's markings in all of these works due to that change. And engraving also enabled artists to draw their compositions and develop their own signature graphic engraving styles, especially Kanojuak Ashevak. It's incredibly graphic work. Printmaking was a medium that provided sustainable income through multiple editions that could be distributed widely to far-reaching markets and audiences for Indigenous artists in the Arctic, but also in the Northwest coast. And this contributed to a revival of Indigenous aesthetic traditions and passing down knowledge, often matrilineally. These print centers also provided communal spaces and a means to communicate ancestral stories, as we saw in Double Vision. And the imagery really conveys a sense of the nomadic lives of the artist's youth, which I'll get into as we talk about the works. And the important interconnection, as I mentioned, between material and spirit worlds and humans and animals. So I wanted to start by talking about this work here. It's the only textile work or beaded work in this print collection, and it is an Amutuk front piece by Elizabeth Naraluk Aluju, and it was to be attached to a baby wearing coat, like the one that Maya mentioned was depicted in Jesse's work. And so you can see here also the symmetry of the double vision is happening again. And it's just so intricate. So there's mostly beads in here, but also these caribou teeth, and it's backed on felt, and sinew is used in between. And for the beading. So this is a prized possession of ours in our collection. And actually for an exhibition that Tanya Willard had curated, we took it out and it was on a velvet backing, and now it's on this beautiful white backing that I feel like it looks like so contemporary and again so colorful, and really a good example of how it would have been attached as a front piece to this baby wearing coat, but how aesthetics were just part of daily life. So with the baby on the back and this beautiful front piece on the front. To my right, we have work by Pudlo Pudlat. There's the Young Loon Fishing from 1990, and then the Saddled Muskox from 1979. So Pudlat lived in seasonal camps on Baffin Island, and then moved to Kingate in 1966. And he traveled a lot to southern hospitals due to having tuberculosis. So his imagery actually, these are more traditional, I would say, in nature, but they often were very contemporary, and he would depict like modern technology, snowmobiles, or airplanes. And he was recognized actually in 1990 with a retrospective of drawings at the National Gallery of Canada. So I'm very pleased that we have these two examples of his work. And this image right here, I just love. This is a work by Jameson TV. It's called The Spring Hunt from 1979. And you can see in the composition that we see the action, all of this activity happening on the boats with the hunting. But what I love about it is how large the animals are, and they're full of life. They're not, he's not showing the bounty like dead meat. These are all, overlapping images of very striking animals that they would have been hunting. I won't make you turn around too much, but we have Kanojabak Ashabak works here. And like I said, this isn't the complete collection. We have 3 more of her works. She's so iconic. In 1970, her work, The Enchanted Owl, was on a postage stamp, a Canadian postage stamp. So she grew up traveling again in seasonal camps on South Baffin Island and northern Quebec. And she learned to make handicrafts using caribou sinew and skin. And then again, while in Quebec City in hospital with TB, she made dolls and beadworks, which are lesser known works of hers. And then she moved in Kingate in 1966, where she took on printmaking, primarily imagery of birds. And again, I see a kind of double vision symmetry happening, and these birds are like her imagination in some ways. There's some realism happening there, but also this sort of supernatural quality, and the colors that she uses are just so vivid. Okay, so now the Sleeping in Skins work, which is just behind here. So this is a collaborative work that is made by 3 artists, Ada Aitok, Vital Makba, and Martha Noah. From 1970. It's a stone cut or stencil on paper, and all of the artists are from Baker Lake, and they were all initially stone carvers. And Martha Noah, notably, is Jesse Unark's daughter-in-law. Martha's husband, William Noah, was Jesse's son. Another nice discovery for us. So this collaboration between 3 artists was very common in print co-ops. So each artist would contribute to one aspect of making the print, like drawing, carving, printing. And for me, I love this work too, because it's so endearing too, with these little heads poking out of the animal skins. But it also communicates a lot of what I was getting at about the change in life for Inuit. The importance of animals as a source of food, and also for their hides, and the use of the entire animal. And then, so this print was made in 1970, and there were incredible changes in the 1970s and 80s. This move away from living off the land, where you would sleep outside, or living nomadically in seasonal camps. That provided not only nourishment through the hunt, but also this sense of cultural well-being. And since the 1990s, of course, the decline of the caribou herds due to overhunting and climate change, and then, of course, the contentious subsequent ban on caribou hunting has really affected and impacted the cultural continuity and knowledge transfer. So this print for me really imparts the complex socio-ecological relationship that's essential to life in the North. The work next to it is just a very endearing work by Pitsiolaka Shuna of the owl and the children. And then I'll get you to just pivot one more time over to this wall here. This is all Pitsiolaka Shuna's work. The series that's in the grid there is from Childhood Memories. So you probably recognize her name as well. Ashuna was a very prolific and well-known artist from Kingate. She received the Order of Canada in 1977 and also spent her early years living nomadically in seasonal hunting and fishing camps and settled in Kingate later in her life. So this series, it provides this amazing record, I would say, of early life in camps. Like this work right here, this is the snow houses of my youth, and you can get a sense of these early practices of like stacking the cubes of snow, the igloos in the background, and they would put their bounty up on top of these towers so that the hungry dogs wouldn't get at them. And then there's just this lovely one here too with these little heads peeking out of the tents where they're playing hide and seek. And another one too, which is the retelling of the hunt where they're wearing bear costumes. And you can tell here like there's maybe somebody's inside here, maybe this is an animal itself, and there's this confluence again there. And then finally, two last works. This one I'm just going to speak about, and then I'll tell you a bit of a story. This print here is by Henry Napartuk. It's a study from 1972. So he was actually a sculptor, and his father was a sculptor, so he learned from his father, but he began printmaking in 1972, so this would have been the kind of one of his first studies, and developed a really unique style incorporating abstraction into his compositions. So, I mean, this I would say is pretty representational. You can see figures and animals, or the hunter, but the way that he's overlapped that is a really unique style, and I just love that they kind of blend into each other. We see a bird and a seal and the hunter. And then finally, this work here is Devialuk Alucia Amitu. And he was an artist who lived more in a northern Quebec settlement and used stone block as part of the print image. So you can see that he's kind of kept the rough edge there, which was not as common in the Kingate stone cut prints, like if you look around at the other works, but was more common in that area. And so he tells the story of the legend of the blind boy Lamak. And this story has been told in many different prints. Victoria actually depicts this in a 1982 print, Brother Moon and Sister Sun. And the story goes that Lumak was a great hunter, and he increasingly was losing his sight. He woke up, he couldn't see at all anymore, and a red-throated loon came to him and said, your mother has cursed you, and she took away your sight while you were sleeping. And so the loon submerged the boy over and over deep in the water, and every time he would come up from the water, he would regain his sight. And then he decided to take revenge on his mother. And so he went back, and then he took his mother, he tricked her into spearing a white whale while a rope was still attached to her. He let go of the rope and she drowned. And then her mother, with her long braids, drowned in the water and is said to have turned into a narwhal. So I love finding all of these stories, and the fact that it's, that's my version telling you that I found. But of course, these kind of legends can continue through these works. And I'll just leave it there. That's a lot to take in, and I appreciate all of you with your patience and your focus tonight.